And it's been 10 years since the devastating 2016 West Virginia flooding. Flash flooding across the state resulted in 23 deaths, including 6 in Kanawha County and 1 in Jackson County. An estimated 500,000 people were without power, and thousands of buildings all across the state were either damaged or destroyed. According to NOAA, the storms caused more than $1 billion in damage. And back here in the Mid-Ohio Valley, a new service has just expanded into Wood County to help children in need of a place to sleep. Riverstone Community Services, based out of Upshur County, West Virginia, is offering assistance to children in need of a bed. Parents can apply or children can be referred to Riverstone, and if they are approved, they will receive a full bed kit. A full kit includes the base, box spring, mattress pad, pillow, and in some cases a stuffed animal. Riverstone's founder says his goal is to reach all of West Virginia, not just portions.
Even if it means I got to get up at 1 o'clock in the morning with another member of the organization to drive something 2 minutes from the border of Kentucky to make sure a child has a bed that night, we'll do it. So it was really a matter of how can we serve everyone? We're all about being equitable, fairness. We don't want to leave anyone out. So it was kind of a no-brainer. Once we decided that the shipping option was viable, it was, all right, everybody can take part in this. So.
Swan says he sees the most need in children ages 5 to 12 years old.